So, I'm not very good at making videos, but we're going to do this anyway because I want to document what we're doing with the car here. We picked up this 1987 Honda CRX HF a couple months ago because I've always wanted one, and my husband found this one for a steal, probably for obvious reasons just looking at it. Gonna go through because there's not a lot of videos on YouTube about these unless they're in great condition, or they're the SI model is what we found, is a lot of people do the SIs, not the HFs. So I will include some stills to just kind of show what it looked like. But as you can see, when we drove it home, it had no rear bumper, so that's been reattached. The two front fenders were not attached, neither was the hood, and the exhaust was also off. So the parts that were included with the car was the exhaust. The two front fenders came off of the vehicle that the guy we bought it from had, because he obviously used this as a parts car. That's where I'm assuming some of the stuff went. Poor little car. This car's been beat up. It's changed owners probably 7 times in 2 years. It's got 240,000 miles on it, so it's been driven a lot. As you can see here, this plate here, they go on eBay. They're pretty expensive, actually, to get the new one that says CRX right there. When we got this one's cracked in half, so we glued it back together, and we did this decal that says Hoshi because we located one of the owners from a couple years ago, and he is one of the ones that originally started the selling spree, and he named it Hoshi after the Star Trek character. So we put that on there just kind of for funsies and to kind of pay homage to the original owner that probably took more care of this car than anybody else. From the pictures that I put on here, you can kind of see that the interior was all torn apart. It's still kind of half apart. That door over there doesn't have the panel on it yet. Driver's side door is not from this car. When we talked to the other owner, he said that this car was all intact when he sold it, so I'm not really sure what this door is off of. The kid we bought it from said he thought it was off of an SI, but I'm not really sure if that would make a difference or not as far as body style. Haven't been able to nail that one down yet. Everything I've learned is YouTube is where I've been able to find stuff, but I haven't been able to find a lot. So right here you can kind of tell it's got a rough close. The kid we bought it from also stripped all the internal mechanisms out of it, so when we drove it home, this piece of glass was actually in the door, just rattling against the metal. So our quick fix solution is just shove some wood in there and kind of prop it up so it's not just rattling around. We did have to put these little stops back in. Those were included. We're kind of lucky that most of the parts are still here. They were just torn apart when we brought the car home. I haven't been able to find a lot of videos about these cars, so what I've been doing is telling myself I gotta make videos so that if anybody else is trying to restore one of these or just get one up and running again, there's something to reference. So this is all cosmetic that I've really talked about so far. The seat is not attached. Some guy 2-3 owners ago chopped the brackets off of the original seat, or I'm not even sure if this is original, but he chopped the brackets off of this seat, welded them onto this seat. I don't know if you can see that in there. He didn't do a very good job. We had to take this seat belt, would not work with the seatbelt on the car, so we actually had to take a little Dremel tool, cut some slits in there so that the seatbelt will actually work properly instead of having to use the one that was over on this side across for the driver. So currently no passengers can go in this car. We're trying to figure that out. Apparently one of the guys has all of the other original seats that we're supposed to be able to get. I'm not really sure. None of these console parts were on. They're still not screwed down, but they're in here when we got the car. And so far mechanically we've kind of come to a standstill, just because it's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of parts for an old car that aren't made anymore, let's put it that way. These fenders, you can see they're pretty cracked. I had to put those back on myself. I got some new bolts and just did the best I could with some washers, because some of the bolted holes are cracked and broken. As far as the mechanics go, we did put the exhaust back on. We did get the exhaust from the previous owner. My husband had to actually put it up on a bumper jack in order to get the exhaust back on. It was an ordeal. As far as mechanically, from what we can tell, if I'm wrong about any of this, I probably am wrong about some of it, but I'd be more than willing, if somebody knows what the heck is going on here, please, comments, links, anything. I would appreciate it, because I want to get this car up and running. But from what we can tell, this is not the original radiator. Somebody said it was a racing radiator. I don't know. The car does stay really cold. It's being carbureted. It actually is kind of a pain to get it to stay warmed up, so the radiator must be doing its job. I'm gonna put this down for a sec so I can pop the hood, and then we'll look at some of the other mechanical things that are going on under there. All right, so I'm not sure if this model originally came with air conditioning. If it did, they definitely canceled it out, because I assume it was supposed to be right here. That's what the last guy told us. I'm not really sure how much he really knew about this car, and the guy before him, he said, didn't know a lot either. So we had to buy the new battery. Did not come with the battery when we drove it home. It's probably $130 we had to buy for that. First wouldn't turn over when we got the car, because there wasn't a ground. This is not a permanent solution, but we had to put new terminals on, which was kind of a fuss. What else have we done already? Every time we start the car, we do have to give it a little spray of starter fluid. It will not start without starter fluid. Our next mission in life is to either tear apart this carburetor or get a new one. We think the auto choke is non-existent. I'm assuming it was supposed to come with auto choke. If it did have it, it's no longer there. If it never had it, then it's not there. But we've been fighting with some of these hoses. Luckily, in the climate we're in, a lot of these vacuum hoses will dry out, but these ones actually are in pretty good shape. So lucky there. It's just a lot of abuse this poor thing has gone through. We're missing the top half of this cover. Not really sure where to get that, and I'm sure it's expensive if I find it. We got it from the guy. He said there was a head gasket leak. I don't know if this will show. Back in there you can see some of the leakage and stuff that's going on back here, but we haven't really noticed a lot of engine leaking. When we picked it up, we actually had to drain a ton of oil out of the engine. It was overfilled by 3 times what it needs. I'm not really sure what this guy before the kid we bought it from did not drive it. The guy before did, but he definitely didn't do a lot of things right. He definitely overfilled this poor engine. It was just leaking out of the dipstick there and just pouring down the side of the engine. That's where a lot of this came from. You'll probably notice this little wire hanging down is because the hood latch no longer has the wire to where you can release it in the cabin. So we had this hooked up so that we could just reach, since it doesn't have this front plate right now. We just kind of had it hooked up, and when I pulled it a couple days ago, it just came off, so I'm going to have to reattach that. But it was a quick fix, because obviously this car is she rough. Poor Hoshi. Poor Hoshi. Otherwise, mechanically, the transmission's pretty shot. It's definitely going to need either a rebuild or new transmission altogether. My husband has a couple theories as to other things that could be happening with the transmission, but we had to bleed the brakes because the guy before the last one put brand new calipers and brake pads on and everything, like redid the entire brake system, but he did not bleed the lines. So that first drive home, my husband drove in front of me, I drove my 4Runner behind him. It was a little scary on the stops because it was nothing, nothing, nothing. At the very end, there was a break. And I'm assuming from the back, because the back lines did not have as much air in the lines. Just a little bit of the interior. I mean, it's all pretty rough, let's be honest. It's pretty rough. They somehow, I guess this is like a adhesive carpet you can glue over existing carpet, kind of make it look nicer. So still worn out down into the baseboard. It's just a mess, honestly. Here's the gauges here. I don't know. There it is. So like I said, $241,000. It's a project, but you know, at least we got our hands on it instead of somebody that's just going to keep parting it out, because we did drive this car home for $180. We drove a vehicle home for less than $200. So I'd say that's a pretty good deal. I mean, it's obviously really rough. We had to reconnect this. It's not in great shape. So when we drove it home, it was just, I'm sure my neighbors think that we're absolutely insane. We do have to tarp it right now because I don't want water getting in through this window. We could prop it all the way up, but then it catches, because it's not properly aligned, catches on this gasket here, so that's not good. Let's see, I think that's just about everything I can think of right now. This hitch is for my 4Runner, ignore that. Yeah, so hopefully we're going to look into the carburetor and the transmission next, because Hoshi needs to be on the road. Hoshi is a good car. It doesn't look so pretty, but yeah, it is what it is for a $200 car. It's not so bad. We've already put some money into it, obviously, battery and whatnot, so I'm trying to make sure it stays running, but also don't want to dump a bunch of money into it, because we do have, you know, other vehicles and stuff we have to maintain before we start going into a project. Oh yeah, this is another thing. I'm really not sure what happened here, because these are second gen headlights, not first gen. Original owner, the guy that named this car, he says that it's just a rare model, but when we look into it further, this is a totally different bracket style, and we're just really not sure what's going on. They work fine, but the original was the inset headlights for the Gen 1, which is, this is the last year of the Gen 1, so maybe it is just, hey, they threw in Gen 2 because it's the last year or something. I'm really not sure about all that, but it's just this poor car. That's what happens when these vehicles reach their prime. They still run, they're just old. They get a little more rare because they're old and it's hard to find parts, so people say, hey, that one's, you know, on its last legs, let's start parting it out, and they start selling it to their buddies, and then their buddies sell it to another person, and we really can't even point to how many people in this area have owned this car. We found, like I said, the first guy that started this when he said it was complete when he sold it. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to be kind of documenting this car as we go. Just because I think there's not enough videos of these. If there's somebody else out there like us that's like, what do we do? There's not a lot of information on these on YouTube. I mean, there is, but it's not this type of information of like restoring, mechanical, that type of thing. Not really sure what we're going to do with the body. Honestly, these fenders are trashed, but they're on there for now. Missing that front grill plate. Tried to track them down locally. There's no such thing. There's some people that are selling them off. These are going for $400 or $500 in this area with no engine, just for parts cars. So we really did kind of get away as a steal. So there's that. But anyway, like I said, we'll keep updating, and I just wanted to get all the stuff that we'd already done on here. And I'm probably missing a few things. Like I know we took the spoiler off of the trunk there because somebody had put an SI spoiler on it, which if you look at the body style is not the same from the Gen 2 to the Gen 1. Also, this is an HF model, carbureted, cold-hearted biatch, that's for sure. But like I said, carburetor, transmission's next, so stay tuned.